John Troughton, Director of the Australian Agricultural Centre, What the World Needs Now. It's 100 years since a farmer in Australia, Farmer Frank McDougall, started a mission to try and get better cooperation between production of food, agriculture, and its consumption or the nutrition side of food. And with the assistance of Professor Orr and John Crawford and Nugget Coombs and Elizabeth Roosevelt, he was instrumental in establishing the Food and Agricultural Organisation. Since then, the Sustainable Development Goals has taken those activities further, but they still failed in some respects to properly unite the integration of nutrition or health with agricultural production. But the United Nations has established a Food Systems Summit, and I emphasise the word systems, to overcome this. And one of the actions is to ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all. And Dr. Haddad has requested us to suggest actions that could be taken. And he has solution clusters who are likely to apply those actions. And we would be very interested in cooperating with him in a first action, which is to manage those actions, because that's an area of our expertise. So examining ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all, we recognise it's about nutrition, which by definition is the process of producing and procuring food necessary for health and growth. And the key word in there is process, because that is a method whereby we can digitise and integrate all these systems all the way from production through to consumption, right along the food chain. It leaves open the question of what is nutritious food. The Food and Agricultural Organisation has designated this year, 2021, as the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. And in particular, they've highlighted the essentials that are inside fruit and vegetables that we often ignore, but are essential for the diet. So the question you immediately ask, if fruit and vegetables are your dietary essentials, what proportion of the diet should be fruit and vegetables? And the nutritional answer is about half, 50%, 0.5, half the diet should be fruits and vegetables. So the obviously next question is, what's the other half? And it's grains and proteins. So we have a reasonably clear picture of what the requirement is. 50% should be vegetables and fruits. And the key thing about fruits and vegetables are that they grow almost anywhere. They can grow almost any time. Anyone can grow them. And from the economic side of it, if there's land that's free and energy is free and labour is free and genes are free, then there is a potential to supply food to the disadvantaged. And indeed, there's a lot of support within Australia in educational gardens to support the development of an understanding of growing fruit and vegetables among the children. But globally, there are millions of gardens and food hubs that are operating this way that need the UN to recognise them and support. But the big issue that we have is how can we not only produce quality food, but we can transfer it to the consumer with a minimal loss of nutrients and waste. So the three parameters are growing quality food and then transferring quality food without loss of the nutrient value and without waste. The result, if that can be achieved, is is a huge impact on the health budget of a country. In the case of Australia, it could be as much as the total current value of agricultural production. So the challenges there to understand and to be able to process or manage that process of transferring food from its source to wherever it's going to be consumed. And the key thing about healthy food, and particular fruit and vegetables, is, as the FAO has recognised this year, it has a free bonus pack with minerals and vitamins and antioxidants and phytonutrients, which all have to be preserved as they're transferred along that food chain. So we start with whatever it is, 1 billion tonnes of vegetables. Our issue is how do we transfer that from the production end through to the consumption end, producing it in quality, no nutrient loss, no product loss. There are a lot of other constraints that come into it, and the AAC is very, very conscious of those. And so there are more factors to be involved, but at this point in time, we want to emphasise the fact that we're only going to concentrate on 3 of those initially. But when the other factors are introduced, you're well aware we now have an enormous amount of information that has to be processed and transferred to the individual operator. And about 5 years ago, we did a study for the Minister of Agriculture in Myanmar of how we could accumulate that information, put it together, and provide the operator, the farmer or whoever it is in the food chain, with the information in the form that they want it on a mobile phone, which is a huge challenge. We have not been able to do that in the last 5 years, but we're delighted to see around the world a lot of effort in this area of putting together those sorts of packages. And in particular, We Farm in Africa has now something like 2.5 million farmers on board with their system. Where is science at this point in time? And Professor von Braun, who heads a scientific group for the UN Summit, was asked how sick or how inefficient is the world food system. His answer was that it had problems. But in addition, he was asked what would be a desirable outcome of this. In other words, what is a solution? And he said we need new institutions and frameworks. And so the word frameworks appeals to us because that's what we do. We take a frame, a concept, and we convert it into action. Frameworks. And if we take what we've been talking about and put it into a framework, then we start with the nutrition, which we've defined. We start with the production of it on the farm, which we can define. If we can ensure its nutritional integrity along the food chain, and then we can build into that any other factors that may modify that transfer, then take it to the individual operator, then we have a framework for nutrition, whereby we have a methodology to produce that framework, and we also have a way of establishing the framework, which is a way to operate, a system of procedures or rules for homes, businesses, or society. And we can do that now because of our digital capability. We also have the advantage that Emma Stevens has reviewed 36 such conceptual frameworks, so we can avoid the pitfalls that may have been encountered in the past. And so our action, which we will propose to the United Nations, is that we will produce a framework for nutrition to globally educate, enable and execute actions to produce nutritious food for all. And we can only talk about this because of the capability of our digital space. We need digital technologies for communications and education. We need digital technologies to allow the farmers to sell their products and transactions. And we need our digital technologies because we need them for our building our framework for nutrition, and indeed associated with it, plant breeding. So we can summarise this by saying there are 5 things we're going to do. One is we're going to digitise and fuse the processes from seed to fork to farm, field to farm to fork. We're going to digitise and fuse processes from the faculty, the laboratory to the farm. We're going to exchange goods. We're going to digitise and visualise in 3D and with video knowledge, so we can bring it from the farm into the laboratory and back out again. And we can incorporate these more complex issues into a solution for a community, irrespective of where it is in the globe. So we start with gathering the point cloud data, which we can then send to, in this case, my lounge room, and I can examine it with my grandson, or I can flick it to the APPF or any other expert body to assist us. In this particular case, it's a clear-cut issue of 50 shades of green. They may suggest I send the drone back out again and get a better picture of chlorophyll content of, in this case, a dairy farm. That allows us then to get the formulation of a solution required, an application of a variable rate chemical to anywhere on the farm. Some 7 years ago, another grandson was able to drive a tractor over the model tractor over the internet from Shanghai to Sydney. And today we could do it whereby it's not tractors, but it's drones or autonomous vehicles on the ground or in the air that we can direct to apply that, in this case, chemical in the most appropriate and in a variable rate spray form. And the effect of that is that we can now, with precision, apply those chemicals, and as you can see in that particular case, with no drift. So the action now becomes to build a framework for nutrition to include an exchange, to provide nutritious food for all. But we can go further because we want to focus on the transactions. What is actually transacted? And in the case of today's meeting, it will be to take the nutrition message globally, to win the hearts and minds of the people, to provide solutions, to bring the farms digitally into the homes or labs, and to return a revitalised, reprogrammed pad ready for education. And that will be built around 3 immediate goals. One is to produce food in quality, to have no nutrient loss along the chain, and to have no waste along the chain. Now, it's not that we can't introduce other factors. We can, and in this case we will, because one of the other United Nations efforts is a problem of CO2 in the atmosphere and the need to reduce it. So we can add that to our systems, because the United Nations has said that it wants a race to zero, and we're delighted to see that companies like here in Australia, Lend-Lease, are now having plans to be able to do that. So we can embody into our process those plans which include the necessary to meet this race to zero or mission zero. And we have, in fact, access to a $10 billion global finance fund that will allow us to do that for food and agriculture and the sustainability of food and agriculture. So the framework that we will talk to Dr. Haddad about for his solution cluster, which focuses on planning and data, is this UN framework for nutrition, which will actually include action management, because we will be able to apply the results of the solution clusters come up, integrate it with ideas coming out of the laboratories and universities of the world, but then process it through the chain from nutrition through to the operator, and to have that both for the transition of knowledge, an exchange of knowledge, but also exchange of products and services. And in addition to that, we can include the need to be cognizant of our carbon dioxide that is potentially lost from that system. And we have some subject matter experts, quite a lot of them actually, that are ready to do a project of that type, so that our conclusion is that what the world needs now is a game-changing UN framework for nutrition, to establish a UN framework for nutrition, and to unite the frames with work with procedures. And out of that, we can actually develop a nutrition operating system. We have defined nutrition, and so simultaneously what we want to do is to communicate and educate at the same time as the system is capable of enabling and executing as required. It's the beginning of a journey, but it will be a great journey. Thank you.